Venus and star blessings. Hope you're all doing well, and hope you were able to see the beautiful full moon that was everyone's been bragging about. Conjunct Saturn, and what I found really interesting, which I mentioned in my new moon video, full moon rather, was Lilith sitting opposite the full moon in conjunct sun. I'm going to talk about Venus today, just a few comments that I'd like to make, because we are, around the corner from Venus stationing direct. Just a couple of other comments I want to make, but I just want to highlight just things that I've been observing in the world. I think that Lilith being highlighted in that full moon really brought about a stance that many people have taken. And what I mean by that is that, well, first of all, Lilith is an archetype that corresponds to standing for sovereignty, autonomy, freedom, and not conforming, right? Very simply put. So, it's been noted that within the last few days or thereabouts, that certain countries are trying to bring back certain mandates, restrictions, and so forth relative to an apparent new strain of some kind. And certain states in certain countries tried to literally implement these very specific rules and mandates and whatnot, and the people pushed back basically and just said, no, we're not having just not having this BS anymore. So what I've subsequently heard is that those certain states, like in schools and things like that, they've now turned back. They've reversed what they were trying to implement. And just here in Australia yesterday, in Queensland, in a particular state in Australia, there was an announcement on the news that all the doctors and nurses that were barred from being able to practice because they hadn't received the liquid in their arm are now able to go back to work, even though they don't have that that liquid in their arm. I'm using this language, for obvious reasons, right? You all know what I'm talking about. So it's just very interesting. There's some things being overturned and changed. I also, someone sent me an article which is really, really interesting. It's by Dr. McCullough, actually. Some of you might know who he is. He's another doctor that's been banned and cancelled and so forth because he has been speaking up on the truth as well in the last 3 years. And there's an article that shows now that the American Institute of Health has finally stopped denying that ivermectin actually works as a form of medicine to heal a virus. So that's a really big deal, because that's been denied for so long by the mainstream. It's been slammed, denied, made out that it's BS and it's a lie and so on and so forth. But there's been so much evidence and research that has shown that numerous people who chose to take ivermectin actually had very good results. So anyway, when you get the National Institute of Health in USA finally coming to their senses, as it were, and admitting that, well, in fact, this does work. That's a big turning point in where we are. So I put that down a lot to, well, a lot of different things, but I think this full moon, because that Lilith was there with this full moon, I think she had something to do with a lot of these things that are transpiring at the moment, because she's in Virgo, which is about health, and she's an archetype that will not conform to the status quo or to some forced way of living or believing something or whatever it is that doesn't come from a place of truth or sovereignty. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting, and I'm very pleased to hear that. Now, there's lots of other things going on, and I think I will probably touch on a lot of this stuff what I'm planning to do is I'm planning to bring Roman Kolev back, and he's agreed, which is awesome. So that will happen next week sometime, and we're going to talk about Mars, which will disappear, as it were, in terms of heliacal phases. So just in the same way that Venus disappears and reappears through her heliacal phases, that happens with all the planets, actually. And so it's actually going to happen with Mars. It will be different days depending on where you are, but in Melbourne it starts on the 28th of September. And Mars will be invisible until the 18th of January. So it's October, November, December, January. It's almost 4 months. That's a long time. And I think that's going to be a very important disappearance of Mars at this point in time with everything that's going on the Earth. And, there's different ways of looking at that. And I'm sure that Roman is going to cover it very thoroughly for us, but I suspect it's going to be things like, well, Mars disappearing reduces its conflicting, harsh energy. It's not as potent because it's not visible, you see. Well, it won't be for about 4 months. So there's something very significant about that. And there are other nuances to that as well. It could be that, if you have enemies, you might struggle to be aware of who they are and where they are and what they're up to, because they're hidden at this time. So there's a few different layers. But we'll get to that when I speak to Roman. He's really the go-to person, when it comes to Babylonian astrology. So that'll be something really interesting that we'll talk about next week. So for today, I just wanted to mention, these few things, and also my classes as well, which have started, and you can join. They are open for you to join. You may just wish to do a couple or one here and one there. I'm keeping it open in that way, just to keep it flexible, because everyone has different reasons, different needs, different things they're interested in, and so forth. So the first one started last weekend, I think it was. And it was amazing. It was on the personality and the soul, as I think I've already mentioned. That goes for about 3.5 hours. Very powerful class. Lots to take away and learn from that, from evolutionary astrology, esoteric astrology, and also Venus's cycles as well. The next class actually is on the 8th of September, I think it is. So it's not too far away. So if you're interested, just email me, let me know. We can go from there. Venus, let's talk about Venus. So Venus has been reborn as the morning star, as we all know, the Leo morning star. Very, very powerful position for Venus in Leo. in Babylonian astrology, Venus in Leo is like an exalted position for her. It's one of her primary animals as the Venus morning star, relative to her being the goddess Ishtar of Akkad, which is a place in Mesopotamia, Babylonian times. So Venus in Leo is a very, very dignified, very powerful position. She is stationing direct on around the 3rd, 4th of September. So that's just, just a couple of days away, really. And we've been through, a very long journey of her being retrograde. The journey lasts for about 40 days or so. I think this time around it was about 40, it'll be 43 days in total of her being retrograde. And she picked up 2 very specific aspects to 2 planets, to Jupiter and Uranus, of which she formed a square to those planets 3 times. The 3rd passage is on it's approaching shortly. Venus will square Jupiter for the last time on the 17th of September. That's because she goes direct in a couple of days' time. So she goes direct on the 12th degree of Leo, and Jupiter is around about 15 of Taurus. So by the 17th of September, Venus reaches 15 degrees of Leo. So she forms that square to Jupiter. That's the last passage. That should show us something about what has come out of actually this Venus square Jupiter for you, if it's been a significant portal for you, if it's brought up Venus Jupiter things. Like I've said previously, Venus and Jupiter are 2 benefic planets, so they're not difficult energies at all. They are the 2 benefics, right? And even though square aspect is a difficult aspect, a Venus square Jupiter aspect typically is not a difficult passage. It's not a difficult transit. If anything, it might just speak to, an excess of some kind where you might need to withdraw something or pull something back, where you had an oversight or just, went too far with something, and, you need to kind of bring it back in line, as it were. It's more the Venus square Uranus that I think has been a difficult passage for people. But it's also an incredibly liberating passage, because whilst Uranus will stir the foundations and will create some uncertainties, or uncomfortable things might come up, it is an archetype that brings in the ability to be authentic and truthful. Authentic, it's so important. And so I suppose that Venus squaring Uranus really has probably highlighted some themes for people where they either haven't been authentic and honest, or they have been the recipient, of that by somebody else. And I know a few people that have experienced that by others. I even experienced it myself. It was very shocking, actually, which is Uranus. Uranus will shock, when something shocks you. Something that you didn't foresee, for whatever reason that may be. So, there's a few people that I know their relationships have ended, with this Venus square Uranus. Venus retrograde, of course, always invites us into some type of journey where we will reevaluate where we are pouring our love, Venus, our love, and what we have held as valuable to us. And so where that has not been authentic or not worked out, it's, it comes up under very strong review with Venus retrograde and square the Uranus. There's a sudden breaking point, a sudden breakthrough with that as well, which is indeed what happened to me with a very specific situation. And it was very hurtful, actually, because there was some dishonesty, not some, there was very specific dishonesty there that happened, and it was yeah, really, really disappointing. But anyway, these things happen, and I'm actually grateful that it happened, because it was, for me, it just feels like Venus just showed me what I needed to see so that I can finish this particular section, let's say, and get prepared for this new cycle, right? Because when Venus stations direct, that's really like the hallmark, if you like, of her really creating that momentum of moving forward and starting actually a new 8-year cycle. And we could break it down to 9.5 month cycle, because in 9.5 months, Venus will form a conjunction again to the sun. It'll be in Gemini, and that'll be a direct Venus star point, for instance. In 19 months' time or thereabouts, she will go retrograde again, right? And then in 8 years, she starts that whole pattern again. So this is really a new beginning. And obviously, paying attention to where Leo is in your birth chart is where this has been, where these themes or other aspects connected to these sorts of themes have shown up for you. And for me, it's been in my 7th house, actually, which is partnerships, relationships, any one-on-one association or connection. And it's been a kind of bittersweet journey, actually, but more sweet. And the sweetness is very much associated to the new alliances and connections that I've formed, and Roman Koloff being the main one, actually, that has, opened my world into newfound wisdom about the mysteries of the goddess Venus, which is, for me, when I discover new teachings or new wisdom or new insights, that's when my soul is happiest, actually, apart from if I'm dancing, because I love dancing. Anything that inspires the heart and the soul is obviously very, very fulfilling. It nourishes the soul. It feeds us at that very deep level that cannot be compared to anything external and can never be taken away from you, you see. When you learn and embody and evolve and grow and attain wisdom and attain insights and become more conscious, more aware, more understanding, can see more, and so on and so forth, regardless of what's happening on the exterior with the diabolical things that are happening on the earth plane, very harsh, diabolical things. Yes, they are troubling. Yes, they are hurtful. Yes, they are stressful, all those things, but nothing can shake the core of the richness of your soul, the depths and richness of your soul. And I think I posted this yesterday. I said that, the kingdom of God is within all of us. The kingdom of God is within. I posted that very purposely because of what I've been feeling and reflecting. And, I'm being shown so much. I'm being shown by the things that I'm observing from the point of view of the horrible things that are happening on the earth plane and that have impacted a lot of people in very severe and devastating ways. And I those things bother me. It worries me. I'm bothered. I'm upset. I'm angry. I'm all those things. Very sensitive person. So I care. But then on the other hand, I'm being shown by spirit so many other things that speak to a totally different perspective and a totally different picture to what's appearing. and I'm being shown through wisdom and inspired vision and inspiration. And that's far more fulfilling to me than somebody dropping 100K in my bank account. Honestly, I mean that. It really is. Because the 100K, like, I'll be so happy to have that, for instance, right? Just like anybody would. And yeah, that'll bring me some ease and some ability to do certain things that perhaps I can't do at the moment. And that's all great. And I'd be grateful for that and I'd appreciate that. But that's just a temporary thing that won't last. But the richness of your soul evolving and the moments of inspiration that come through the experiences that you have and the insights that you attain, they are kind of infinite, you know. They sustain the soul, and nothing or nobody could ever take those away from you. That's the beauty of the richness of the soul. Anything that is external of us in the material world has an expiration date and or can be taken away from you, as it were, at any given moment. But what you have contained within you, in your essence, in your heart and in your soul, nothing or no one can touch that or take it away, ever. That to me is inspiring. And that's how I feel coming out of these last days of Venus retrograde. Venus will station direct. I might just bring up the chart because there's a couple of other things to highlight. So here's the chart for today. This is the 1st of September here in Melbourne. And there's the moon conjunct Neptune, which I'm really feeling at the moment. So we're still in a full moon phase, but, you know, the exact full moon is obviously past. And yeah, the moon was conjunct Saturn and Lilith was in Virgo at that time. So Venus, let's just highlight Venus. So there is Venus there at 12 degrees. That's the degree she's actually going to go direct on in just a couple of days' time. And I have to say, this is by far one of the most powerful Venus retrograde cycles that I've consciously integrated, worked with, and been so aware of in a multitude of ways. It's really going to go down for me as one of my, you know, top 5 journeys in life, if you like. That's how powerful it's been for me. It's just so hard to put into words what I feel, but I've tried with some things that I've spoken to. And yeah, you know, we're a couple of days away, so I'd be interested to hear your reflections on your personal journey, if you're willing to share what's come up for you, what truths have come up for you. Has the square to Uranus helped you be more authentic to your life's path, you know, to your soul, to your heart? Because that's really the essence of that Uranus square Venus. Yes, there's all those other layers that could bring in the uncertainty and the unexpected situations that may have not been pleasant, and all of that. There's all of that. But at the core and at the essence, the value of this is the ability to be authentic and true to your heart, Venus in Leo. And that might be at the expense or at the cost of rubbing up certain individuals the wrong way, as it were. It's going to happen. When you shine the light, someone very important in my life who I don't see anymore, but I consider that soul a very important soul passing through my life, always said to me, when you shine the light in people's eyes, be prepared for the consequences. People, that's a metaphor for truth. There's a lot of resistance to truth. We can see that on a collective level as well, obviously. But I guess, it's really about having the courage to do so, to be true to your heart, no matter what. And I feel that's what I have done. And that's a rewarding feeling for my soul, Moving forward, as Venus moves forward in her direct motion from around about the 3rd or 4th of September, she forms the final square to Uranus. That'll be on the 29th of September. So that's a month away. So there's a few more details that will become more clear by the end of this month relating to this Venus retrograde cycle and, of course, the square to Uranus more specifically. So let's see what that brings up. I mean, from a collective level, the Venus square Uranus can also speak to the proposed intentions with the world of digital currencies and so forth, which I'm not a fan of. I know many people are not. So let's see what happens with that. Ceres will ingress into Scorpio on the 16th of September. To me, that's a big deal. Not to me personally, but from an astrological perspective and from a perspective of archetypes, that's a big one to pay attention to. And the reason I say that is because Ceres is a very difficult asteroid. And however you look at that asteroid, you cannot experience the passage of Ceres without an experience of some type of loss or grief. Coming out the other side of it is a potential renewal, regeneration, transformation. That's the potential. But you can't get there unless you go through some kind of loss. Ceres speaks to loss, grief. Now in Scorpio, that's that says that there's a very likelihood of an intensified version of the matter of loss or grief of some kind. And because Pluto and Mars are the rulers of Scorpio, and on this occasion I want to focus more on Pluto being the ruler of Scorpio when Ceres gets there, which is middle of this month. That's a very interesting, correlation there, because not only does Pluto rule Scorpio, but Pluto is the primary character in the myth of Ceres. Ceres had a daughter called Persephone. Pluto came out of the underworld onto the earth plane, as it were, and saw Persephone, wanted her, abducted her, took her into the underworld. That was Pluto, Hades, who did that. So when we know that story, and there's so many nuances and details to that story, but when we understand the basis of that story, and we see that Ceres ingresses into Scorpio, which is Pluto's sign, we know that's going to be a significant passage on the earth plane from that point of view of that myth. And it will be more significant for certain individuals than it will for others. and perhaps individuals who have a Pluto Ceres Persephone aspect or theme going on in their own birth chart, they might see these themes activated more so at this time in life, which, you know, I realize it's not the greatest news, as it were, but that's life, isn't it? You know, we have everything in life, everything. You know, we can't just choose what we like and what we want and just totally deny and block out everything else. We just simply cannot do that. We have to find ways to work through all the various different waves and levels and experiences that show up, because we have to, because it's inevitable, it's going to happen, and B, and not in any particular order really, anything that does show up, no matter what it is, holds the potential for some type of growth and development and evolution for the soul. Everything can be seen as an experience that can teach us something. That's what life is. It's a school. School for the soul. So anyway, it will be very interesting to see. I might come back and talk further to it. I haven't really contemplated too much about it. I just noticed it literally just before I came on today, that Ceres is at, you know, the sort of the last degrees of Libra, and I immediately thought, in Scorpio, that's going to be, I think that's going to be a bit rough, you know. Perhaps I'll come back and talk about that. Anyway, look, that's really all I wanted to share for today. I hope that was interesting and useful in some kind of way. And like I said, I'll see you guys next week with Rumen. I just cannot wait for that conversation. I think it's going to be amazing. And also I'll see those of you joining classes on the 8th of September. If anybody else wants to come on board, just email me and let me know. So yeah, much love and see you all soon. Bye for now.